We have a quorum.
All right, great, thank you. All right, approval of minutes from the last meeting. Well, I'm sorry, I missed the prayer. Can I have a volunteer for our prayer? And will you help us, Jeff? Okay, thank you.
Everyone rise, please. Heavenly Father, we thank you again for the opportunity to meet.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we've done the roll call. Item 3, approval of minutes from the last meeting. Hopefully you'll have reviewed them and I could get a motion. We have a motion. We have a second. You have a second. Mr. Rowland, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? So moved. All right, item number 4, unfinished business, review of the prior meeting. Any discussions or comments from our last meeting? Hearing none. How about from our public comments for any of our last meeting that we had? Any comments, questions? All right, hearing none, we'll get right to new business. We have a presentation from St. George, Councilman Heck and Councilman Morrell. We appreciate that you're here. We'll go ahead and have you come up and make that presentation. Thank you.
Ron, you want to go ahead? Want to do this?
Did it get on the screen?
Yeah, I'm going to plug it in. I don't know.
Y'all want the 5-minute version, the 1-hour version?
You can do the 4-month version.
We don't have a lot of time, unfortunately, so the 1 hour would be good.
Yeah.
The 1 hour into 5 minutes would be better.
Okay, got it. Ron?
We really appreciate y'all coming all the way down here. We've been following in the press of your success, and we're very appreciative to give us kind of.
We were a little unsure of the format. So y'all want to do a lot of Q&A or something, because we
will at the end. I'm gonna let you make the presentation, and I'm sure members are quite inquisitive in reference to your new city and the charter.
Yeah, so because our election's actually in like 2 or 3 weeks, so
Good.
we're still like in the process of where y'all might get.
So everything we say today can be held against us. That's great.
And we can tell you about some mistakes that we made along the process, that when we agreed to come and tell you about all our success, we can tell you about some of our failures.
Well, we appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, so I'm sure y'all have heard of St. George. We don't need to go through all of that. We are a brand new city in East Baton Rouge Parish, whereas you guys are the parish government. We are a consolidated form of government, so a lot of the decisions that we made, because we're operating in a consolidated form of government, a lot of decisions we made for our city may be a little different than how y'all choose as just being a parish. So obviously y'all's call was made. Your city council said, let's put together a home rule charter commission. Let's revisit your current home rule charter. We're not in a home rule charter. We're in the Lawrison Act. We're trying to just get into home rule charter. Now, when you get into the portion of, it's kind of a choose your own adventure book. One of the first decisions you're going to make if you're starting in a new charter, we were new, is which direction to go. Do you go strong mayor, which is probably typically what, that's the parish president weak council model. I believe that's what you guys are probably in. Or the other question, the other fork in the road is council manager form of government. That's really your two main options, and you can do hybrids of those. We selected council manager form of government. We will still have a mayor. It will be elected by the people. These were all choices made by the Home Rule Charter Commission. I, as the chair, did not win that argument. Like, I wanted to do something completely radical, but we didn't get there. We have a document that unanimously passed out of our Home Rule Charter Commission and unanimously passed our city council that's now going to the people, where it's probably a coin flip right now. It's very radical we have found that going to the council manager form of government is very foreign to folks in Louisiana. There is nobody currently really doing it.
In fact, one of the biggest oppositions we've gotten so far is we don't do that in Louisiana, which we thought actually was talking us into it. But somebody said that was an opposition.
Yeah, so that...
Except in the parish in police
Correct.
jury forms,
And-
many
yeah.
of them have...
In municipal forms, in the city governments that we were looking at, the way we're doing council manager is the only version of it in the state so far. Now, outside of Louisiana, 65% of the rest of America does
Right.
the council manager.
That's what
form
they're
of
moving
government.
towards.
Yeah.
Predominantly, Texas does almost exclusively council manager this time.
So I was appointed chair, and we presented both options to our 11. We had 11 members. Looking back on that, probably should have expanded that. The fact that y'all have more than 11, I think. I can't really see too well. We went very fast, whereas I think that when you make the call, it allows for 18 months of timing. We got ours done in a 4-month period.
Including passing the bond commission.
Yeah, so we went at a lightning pace. There was 11 of us. We went and got a very diverse cross-section of St. George, got in a room, worked backwards from March 29th. Is this achievable? Yes, it is, but here's the milestones we must meet. We had 9 to 11 public meetings, some obviously all of them open to the public. Some of them were just for the public, just kind of a back and forth and stuff. Y'all gonna need to get more people in the room. We had about this many people, and it was a detriment. If we could have gone maybe a little slower, and what we're finding out in the election process is people feel like they weren't part of the process.
And to be fair, one of the detriments of starting a new city is we have a timeline where we had to have our officer elections at the first available municipal election, March 29th. Well, if you don't have your home rule charter in place by then, they're getting elected according to the Larson Act, and you can't implement that home rule charter until the next term after that. So we kind of had some timeline constraints that required us to go faster than we would have wanted to. At the same token, in that 4 months, we were able to meet and pretty much accomplish all of the goals we had. Another opposition point is, well, I would have done that differently. That's great, but you weren't in a vacuum creating this document by yourself. There's a whole council or charter to do it. And of the 11 people, we were able to compromise and like it to such a degree, we could pass it unanimously, which we thought was important to tell the public. 11 different people, 11 different backgrounds, came together over a 4-month period, and at the end of the day, no matter if I liked a particular piece or not, this document was so good, we all felt compelled to pass it and bring it to a vote of the people.
See, right now, y'all are in a home rule charter, so, a decision was made to get to at least that process. We're in Lawson. We promised our folks during the creation of St. George. I wasn't a part of the creation of it, but they promised me no police force because we already have a sheriff force. And so redundancy of services, why do cities go broke? I was a former parish council person for East Baton Rouge Parish in the consolidated government a dozen years ago. And so, every time I wanted to change something, it's like, well, why can't we do this? Well, it's in the home rule charter like that. It's difficult to change. So we felt like going for something exactly what, really what we told the folks, professionally managed city manager. That's what was sold to the people that signed the petition, and so we felt like we had to deliver that for them. There is a feeling within St. George of the people that are opposed to the home rule charter that you can do that. You can, the mayor can then go hire a city manager. Y'all may call it a city manager. He may be a chief administrative officer. But at the end of the day, it's more of a business structure decision, because you either got one man or woman calling the shot, and that's your strong mayor, which I believe, or strong parish president, which is what you guys are in, and then a council that probably getting paid part-time money with part-time resources. And it's very difficult to do. I've done it. They keep you in the dark. You're a mushroom, and they feed you what they feed you. And it's difficult. And so we decided to go council manager. I would encourage you guys, I don't know if y'all are gonna take the original document that y'all are working on and like leave that here and maybe blaze a new path to consider, or whether y'all are looking at specific revisions to each chapter and item in your current. I would encourage you, making changes is extremely difficult. The East Baton Rouge Parish created their plan of government in 1949, and it is terrible. It was great in 1949. It cannot get changed. They just put an item on the agenda in the last year, 62 different items, and they put it in one item, not 62 different things to change in the plan of government. Of course, it got destroyed, and nothing's getting done.
In fact, on the ballot, because you couldn't put that information on there, on the ballot in the voting booth was a link to a website.
Yeah, and if you're explaining, you're losing.
And so what we went with, the council manager form of government, what we found out was, if you have a complaint, if a citizen's complaining about something, who are they calling? Are they calling the parish president, or are they calling their direct council member? They're calling their council member. That's the person they have a relationship with. That's most likely their neighbor, friend. They have some connection to it. So by putting the onus on a council manager form of government, it puts the council in charge. So if you have an issue and you bring it to your council member and the council member agrees or is accountable to you, they can put an item on the agenda and address that grievance through an ordinance or a resolution. What we were stuck with, if we don't pass the Home Rule Charter, the Larson Act, the mayor sets the agenda, the mayor puts the items on there, and there is no ability or flexibility for the city council to come in and affect change.
We're in extreme, if we get stuck in Larson, we're in the most strong mayor form of government you can get. A council person can't even put anything on the agenda.
Yeah, and one of the other detriments from the Larson Act, the strong mayor parish president model is, that's the person who proposes the budget. And in that model of government, the council only has two choices, yes or no. No line item veto, only veto it or approve it. They don't have the resources to look at it. They can't really do a lot about it. It's basically crammed down their throat, as opposed to council manager form of government. You have a professional who does this for a living. I'm really good at smiling and shaking hands. I am not good at paving roadways and cleaning out drainage ditches. I'm not qualified to do it. But a city manager will be qualified to do it, professionally qualified, paid to do it. They create the budget for the city. They bring the budget forward, and at that point, the council and the mayor have the ability to veto it, line item veto it, approve it, or just deny it outright. So it gives you more flexibility, especially when your mayor or your parish president may not have the same interest in mind as a city manager who could be fired for poor performance. If the grass is overgrown, the city manager is going to get fired.
How many council people do y'all have in the parish government? 14. Basically, the engineers and everybody that runs the towns, they got to go by 14 people instead of just a parish president. And it gets a lot more expensive for them, and it's harder for them to do. So you have more parity across the board.
And some of this was really a reaction to the parish government we were surrounded by, which is one of the reasons we created St. George in the first place. If you have a mayor or a parish president that's elected from the other side of the parish, at some point you feel like, and what we discovered was, we were getting less in value. There was no accountability to the southeastern portion of the parish. We might pay $60 million in sales tax. We probably got less than $30 million returned in services with no accountability for us whatsoever. We had nowhere to go. The mayor wasn't beholden to us or answerable to us. But in this form of government, my council member will be. We actually have 2 at-large council positions that we've created. So you have 3 opportunities to talk to a council member who is accountable to you in some form or fashion.
One of the things I would recommend is, in addition, no matter what y'all decide, this was a really cool thing that I wish was my idea, but it wasn't. It got brought up in the Home Rule Charter, and we unanimously adopted it. every 10 years after the census appropriation, we said we're going to put there'll be an automatic call for another home rule charter commission. Now, at that time, that city council may call it and close it. They could, but at least it's in there. So it gives every 10 years when the census gets redone, it gives the new group of folks, and some of you might be on the next home rule charter commission. Some of you may not live here. But a new group of folks will get to come in and take another look at the document, because it needs to always be, in my opinion, being looked at and improved. Because whatever y'all decide, it's not going to be perfect. Don't let perfect get in the way of better than you have now. And that's what we kind of decided, and that's why we were able to get it done rapidly, because we were creating something new. Y'all have to go fight about all the old stuff, and we didn't have any of that encumbered upon us. So we were able to get to work very quickly because everybody had kind of the same goal. But going back and putting in your language, calling for another home rule charter every 10 years, that was we had unanimous support for that.
Yeah, not a lot of discussion. Other things that were probably St. George reactions to EBR parish government, tax protections. We hear about it a lot. We pass a lot of taxes in EBR parish. They're allowed to up our property tax 7 mills with just a simple majority council vote. St. George, one of our big onuses when we created the city was to prevent taxation without representation. We have a large portion of our parish that will vote for every property tax that comes out there, and we know that St. George is paying about 40% of that bill every time. So in our home rule charter, there's a provision that says any tax increase from the city of St. George whatsoever must eventually go to a vote of the people to be approved or rejected. And that's kind of going back to some of our core philosophies with St. George that created it. Same thing with term limits. We get tired of seeing career politicians. This is a chance to prevent some of that and have some new blood, kind of like the review process where you have a chance to revisit and kind of renew and revitalize your city. And then finally for us, checks and balances was really big. Like we talked about with the mayor presenting the budget, and the mayor's budget, they get it. I think the council has about 30 days to look at it. It's like a 1,000,000-page document. They can't do anything but veto it or approve it. That seems like a silly way to manage $1 billion every single year, but that's how EBR Parish does it. Instead, with the checks and balances, you always have the ability from the city manager making a proposition or proposing a budget to the council reviewing it and looking at it to the mayor having a final look. And you know what? If the mayor gets it wrong and vetoes it, the council can come back and override it. There's a continuous check and balance for every part of what we built into our home rule charter. And it allows for a strong leader to be great, but it prevents a bad leader from crippling your government. As I said before, in EBR Parish, we've suffered for a little while now, $1 billion budget every single year. 2/3 of that budget is tied up in pension debt and bond debt. So only 1/3 of our annual budget goes towards that year's services. And that's because we didn't have the checks and balances, and we probably needed, in EBR Parish, that city manager, actually there's like 18 people fulfilling that role. They only answer to the mayor. They're hired and appointed by the mayor. What are they going to do? They work for the mayor. They're only accountable there. In our system, the city manager is accountable to the city council, with the mayor having a veto and an override.
And we recently had an unexpected switch in administrations in East Baton Rouge Parish, and so you do lose in a strong mayor in a strong parish president, strong mayor form of government. The new administration comes in, well, everything the other one did was wrong, right? Even the good stuff. You just throw it all out the door, and then you lose that continuity. You lose some of the good stuff. You get rid of the bad stuff, but you lose some of the good stuff. With that parish president manager form, this city or parish manager or whatever y'all would call it, they would be continuity. Like they're not getting elected. You'd have to have a majority of your membership vote to get rid of this city manager. It's a whole lot harder to do. Your council composition seems. So when St. George got founded, but per law there were 5 people. The governor appointed a mayor, a chief of police, and 5 city council persons. That's the law. we decide, so one of the things y'all are probably talking about is the size of and the composition of how many parish council persons y'all need. I have been in an elected body that was 12. I have been in an elected body that is now 5. I'm going to tell you, there was some weird things about having an odd number. A lot of times it didn't really matter because people didn't show up or whatever, but it never made a lot of sense to me to have 12. I would either had 13 or 11. I don't know if your parish president can vote. If y'all change it, he could possibly, that could be one of the things y'all discuss. Maybe he breaks a tie. All of that's possible in your new plan of government if that's what you guys want. I would recommend a number probably between 7 and 13. You don't need too many cooks in the kitchen. Maybe y'all decide that you want 7, 5 districts, 2 at large. Maybe you want to make them full time, and maybe you want to give them the resources. You want to pay them right and give them the resources to make better decisions. I don't know what y'all's council gets paid. I'm sure maybe composition is part of this discussion if you're looking at everything. We just recently decided on $36,000 for each council person. We decided 5 districts, 2 at large. So we were created with 5 districts. We added 2 at large. So we're at 7. We paid each council person $36,000 a year. Our mayor will be elected, and that is defined as a full-time position in our home rule charter. I lost that vote. And we set that at 160. Now, we're getting annihilated about that right now. Now, we did not, that was set by ordinance, that was the council. My recommendation, do not put salary in your home rule charter. The council pay in East Baton Rouge Parish is $1,000 because in 1949, that's what they made it.
And it's in their plan
And it's
of
never,
government.
it's in the plan of government, and it's never been changed. And no party can change. It's a terrible vote to have to make to set your own salary or the next people's. And you have the peanut gallery out there saying these people should work for free, these people should work for $1 million, these people this, it's a miserable argument. Take it out of your plan of government if it's in there. Let it be done by ordinance. Let a council do it. Y'all don't want to do it because you're just going to get hammered. They'll kill your changes because of you're trying to set salaries. Let the council handle that.
Yeah, so some of the pitfalls we've encountered from an education standpoint, to Ryan's point, every meeting we had was open. We had several that were just public only. They were streamed or broadcast. Notes were posted online after every meeting. And after 4 months and multiple meetings, we don't know anything about it. That's what the public would say. And because they see a 20-page document, it looks like it might be overwhelming. We wrote it as simply as we could so everyone could understand it. My general voting rule is to vote no if I can't understand the language. So we wrote it as layman as we could for everyone, and they still complain because it's too big for them to chew on. To me, especially since y'all are taking a longer period of time, I would break this elephant down into bites and have each section gone over and reviewed ad nauseum. Let them soak it in, get their complaints out of their system now before you get to the part where you're going to vote on it. Because once you get where we're finding out is once you get into that election cycle, and unfortunately for us, we have candidates running for office at the same time we're approving a home rule charter. That would be another pitfall. What are opposition candidates who don't participate in the process doing? Well, we hate the home rule charter. Why do you hate it? I don't know, but I wasn't a part of it.
Because I'm running against this person and he's for it and I need to be against it.
Yeah, and so they're making it a position not based on belief, but based on I need to get attention for my candidacy. This is what I'm going to do.
If they had any person running for council, currently where we're at, I know they haven't read the document because it makes them the most powerful council in the state, and they're running against it. And I've never actually seen any politician ever do that.
That's why I like it so much.
And our mayor, who's the first appointed mayor, he's seeking re-election. All my other colleagues all the appointed people are running for the office except myself because I'm the one that's been previously elected and I know how terrible it is. Our own mayor is pushing for the home rule charter. I mean, and this guy is like literally the strongest mayor, and probably, I don't know if y'all read the paper, we're wealthy. That's what they say. We took all the money away from Baton Rouge.
We're like y'all.
We're just rich. We're the new North Shore. And our own mayor is saying, I don't want this power. A mayor doesn't need this. He knows he does not have the skill set to run the city. And so you build your plan of government around your strengths and your weaknesses. I'm sure everybody in this room is extremely successful. Maybe one of you guys has ran a $1 billion enterprise, but that's EBR, we're a $1 billion enterprise. That needs a person that, I want to hire somebody that went to Wharton, if I could, over Southeastern. Or, at least want to get the Wharton guy in the room and interview him. Hey, no offense. No offense, but we want professional management. We want to be excellent. We don't want to be good. And so the city manager, the manager form of our thing was extremely important.
And to that point, Dustin, our current mayor who's up for election, if you told me under the Larson Act, he's our mayor, we are awesome. It's great. Life's going to be great for his entire career as mayor. But Dustin understands, like we did, that we're not choosing a plan of government for today, this person, this group. We're choosing a plan of government for 2, 3, 4 generations. One of the cities we looked at as an inspiration for St. George is a place called Sandy Springs, Georgia. Sandy Springs, Georgia is in Fulton County. It's a suburb of Atlanta. After seeing Fulton County take their dollars over and over again and give them nothing, they eventually went to the legislature and created Sandy Springs. Their third mayor hated Sandy Springs, absolutely vehemently opposed to the creation of that city. You got to have your checks and balances in place. I always compare a city to an HOA. I know it's got a negative connotation, but if you have a terrible board on your HOA that does nothing and lets all these restrictions lapse, that's not good. If you have a board that's overzealous that every day is saying, hey, your grass is about ½ an inch too long and I'm going to fine you for it, that's probably not good either. The professional management model allows continuity no matter who's in place. So if you have greatness in office, they can do more. But if you have terrible in office, and eventually we always do, somebody terrible will get elected, this prevents complete dismantling of your city parish or your government or whatever your plan of government is. This kind of allows that professional management. We looked at best in class and we decided Louisiana was not the only place we needed to look. And so we looked at Sandy Springs, Frisco, Texas. The Woodlands is actually not a city, it's a giant HOA. George Mitchell bought all that land and put deed restrictions on the entire thing. That's why it looks so nice. And we looked at cities that said, hey, when somebody comes into our area, are they going to say I'm from Baton Rouge? Or are they going to have that big, sticker that says St. George on it? And that's what we wanted. We think the professional model with the council manager form of government gets us there. It also gets us to a place where council members can address these grievances and have a mechanism to do it where the strong mayor doesn't allow any of that. We also had staggered term limits going back to, one of the cities we looked at is Central, which is next to Baton Rouge, have a huge amount of success. They've got $100 million in the bank. Life is great. But every 4 to 8 years,
every 4 years they clean that place
the
out.
Development folks overtake the agricultural folks, and then they switch up. And I mean, they elect an entire new government, all council members
the last
and
3
mayor.
cycles, all new council, all new mayor.
And
so we decided maybe that's what our folks want, but let's stagger terms so somebody remembers where the light switch is.
Yeah, because day one, you don't want to go, what do we do all day? You have to have some continuity. And so these are some of the things that even though they sound perfunctory or maybe why did you bother, they're actually really important in the long-term success of what we think for St. George.
That's a little nuance that I didn't consider. Someone brought it up, and I remember when I got elected to the council in 2012, you walk in and somebody's not there to show you where your office. I mean, you need a little bit of that continuity.
And the last thing from me is we had St. George is an effort over 14 years where a group of people decided we were going to form a city no matter what it took. 25% of the registered voters had to sign a petition to get that far, and we did it twice. For us, public referendum was a big deal. So under every other form we saw, there was no mechanism for the public to add an agenda item to the council's agenda and require the council to vote on it, so we added it. Now, as our,
Higher bar.
our opposition has pointed out, it's a really high bar because I don't want somebody adding something every meeting, and I don't want to see. I want it to be a serious issue that if you really, really want to address a grievance, that you have a mechanism to do it. And if you can overcome that hurdle, by God, we're going to vote on it. So we added that, and it's the only place that we've seen it. It's definitely not in the Larson Act, and it's not in really most forms of government.
Are any of y'all council persons? So y'all called this.
It's your fault.
Okay. One of the things in the non-council members and the council members, we called this thing so fast, and my colleagues on the council, the other 4 colleagues, didn't really know what they had just done, and so we went and got started, and then they kind of felt left out of the process because the way the law says, they're not really in the process if you're not on this commission. Their bite at the apple is when you bring the work to them and they get to vote on it up or down. That's what the state law says. That gave a lot of heartburn to my colleagues because they felt like, hey man, why don't I get a say? Well, tell me what you're thinking and I'll relay it. And so because we didn't get a bunch, they passed it and they didn't know what they were calling for, and then they had no input. It took a little massaging to get them on board to get it to the people. They thought they should have been more involved. So if non-council members, make sure whatever changes y'all do, that the council is on board with them, because if not, they'll just kill it. They'll kill your work. So they have to be on board. And that was difficult for us to get them to understand that.
Yeah, the biggest issue we face is education. They're scared of it. It's change. Even though they want change, they don't like change. It's big. It's a lot for them to read. It came really fast. It doesn't matter if you took 2 years. Somebody's going to tell you rushed it. They're going to be mad they didn't participate in it. But if you can educate them in each section as you go along and get them used to it, by the time you get to your election, you have a chance to pass something that really can transform the management of your government.
Y'all have any questions or anything? Any specific?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for coming, number one, down that I-12 corridor all the way from Baton Rouge.
Well,
we
we're trying
appreciate
to annex into St. Tammany Parish.
Exactly. Just a
Halfway
couple of
county.
things really quick. Population-wise, did you mention the population of St. George?
86,000.
Yep.
Probably closer to 100, but there's estimates. The demographer came back at like 80, but estimates are, I call it 90 grand, 9,000.
Yeah.
And I kind of understand what you were mentioning about the other council wanting in the process or whatnot, but they do have an opportunity to come to the public
Well,
meeting like
they do.
everybody
Well,
else.
that's the
Or
humor. Yeah, that's the
right, exactly. So we know that can be taken care of. Also, really quick, cost related for you to go through this process, other than like the normal advertising, costs. Was there anything that came about that you incurred a lot of cost on this process?
The way I went to the mayor. So I got appointed specifically to do this task. It's the only reason I took the appointment. I said, I'll take it. If we're going to write the home rule charter, let's go. So, okay, Ryan, you're gonna take care of it. The first thing we did was I'm enough of an expert to be dangerous on planning governments, but I'm not a lawyer and all this stuff. So we went and hired a consultant. It's a local firm that probably does work in the North Shore. I'd worked with them privately and in my government past. They do a good job. They actually gave $1,000 to support the lawsuit to stop St. George. And all of my St. George friends were like, what are you doing?
I'm one of them. I
These
absolutely hated it.
people were our opponents. And I said, well, you know what? You make friends with your enemies, not your friends.
They prepared the PowerPoint presentations. I'm really good with them now.
We were able to, we had them go do a bunch of the research. And so look, we're a town of however big we are. We didn't have an existing plan of government for them to have to go do a bunch of stuff. This was a new document. All in all, I think I haven't really seen the bills, but I wouldn't expect, I'd probably say we probably spent about $50,000, $40,000 on the consultants. When I first got in government, I was afraid to spend money. But
Now you're good at it.
Now I'm really good at it, and that's a pittance in all this consultant world.
No,
They did a really good job.
It really was, because they also helped me. One of my roles is to go sell this and talk to every HOA and community association and business I can find. I would not be able to do that without having them help me along the way, from scheduling to prep to if I want to bounce something off somebody. It's great to have that resource. We probably looked at over 200 home rule charters in more than the 4 months that we started doing this, to get an idea of kind of, okay, what do you like first? Okay, from what you like, what do you like about it? What do you not like? To start batting it around, and it was really nice to have them able to go through and do some of that legwork, cut some of that down, so we could focus on the task at hand, which is we got to draft a home rule charter. We could still be looking at home rule charters from other cities and states if they weren't involved in the process.
If y'all were going with a brand new document, I'd definitely go hire me a good consulting firm that has experience in that. If, let's say, there's 16 different divisions to your plan of government, some of you folks may have subject matter expertise for 1 or 2 or 3 of those particular items. I mean, some of these guys may be the greatest engineers, in St. Tammany, and you may not need to hire any outside consulting. I would definitely, if you're going to kind of break it up into things, if you're we're going to make these 6 changes, maybe even form 6 working groups, with whomever your residents are, maybe a little subcommittee kind of thing, and make sure you get the local knowledge. But if you need expertise, go get it. I wouldn't be afraid to spend the money.
I have one more thing really quick. I know you were talking about the salary set by the mayor and also the council.
We set that in ordinance as a council person.
Right. I just have a quick question. Was that part-time or full-time at the 36K?
36 is, it's okay. So we're in Lawrison. City council passed an ordinance that we believe works for whether the home rule charter passes or it doesn't. In the home rule charter, council is defined as part-time. In Lawrison, council is, I don't even think it's really defined, but it's part-time.
Right. Okay.
In Lawrison, mayor is full-time. In our home rule charter, we chose him to be full-time,
Gotcha.
which is, so the salaries work out.
And
Thank
look,
you.
I'll tell you, one of the big pitfalls, as council members, you're both well aware, part-time job is kind of a misnomer. It is not how it works. We're here now. I've got a meeting after this and one after that. And that's every day. That's part of the gig, right? They knock
I'm
on
not
your
running,
door.
I'll go home.
They knock on your door on the weekends. They want to complain about, the trash in the neighborhood. So it was one of the harder selling points. They see 36,000 and they want to compare it to something and go, part-time, shouldn't you make $7.50 an hour?
So I was on the East Baton Rouge Parish Council. I got paid that pittance. Nobody does it. Well, some people do it for the money, and that's really unfortunate because it's a pittance. So all of my council colleagues currently, no one wanted to carry the salary ordinance because they want to be politicians. So I had to do it. And I said, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to set it where they need to be. If it were me, I would have set the council salaries at $90,000, and I would make them full-time, because you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. You want to pay these people as much as you can so the best people in your parish can run for this office. These guys may be great. They may be better. Maybe they're held back by, maybe there's some 35-year-old hotshot out there who can't afford to leave her job because she's the sole breadwinner and she makes $150,000.
So,
well, give these people an option. You need better. We all need better people, and I say that we need better people than me in this, and you have to pay people.
That's why I'm here. Council manager form of government. The comparable to it is, I'm going to use Exxon as an example. Love them or hate them, it's a $1 trillion company, right? You think they quibble over salaries for people? No, they don't, because they want the best people they can find to run this $1 trillion company. And when you look at the council manager form of government, it's your mayor is your chairman of the board, your city council is your board of directors, and you just hired a CEO to do the day-to-day grinding work while the board and the chairman can focus on the vision for your parish. How do you want the outside world to look at your parish? How do you want the business community to view your parish? How do you go attract new business, promote small business? how do you keep your parish looking the way it is so everyone brags about being from the North Shore and doesn't move off somewhere else? Well, this is what the board and the chairman do. Meanwhile, because you've got time to do it, meanwhile, your CEO, your city manager, is doing that day-to-day work and being accountable to the public by cleaning up, mowing, doing the landscaping, paving the roadways. In our world, drainage is a monster issue. And he's doing so, or she's doing so, at the direction of the vision set by your chairman and board of directors.
Thank you. Joe?
Thank you for coming. Actually, you just answered my question.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? Pat?
Okay, so you're getting into the pay scale. How many people work for each council member?
So,
How do you pay?
very good.
Where's the revenue coming from, and do you have any problems with that?
Okay, so St. George is primarily funded through a 2% sales tax. So if you look at our revenue source, you'll find almost 100% comes from that. There's also occupational licensing, franchise fees, some use taxes that go to St. George, but your primary funding mechanism is that 2%. Employment is this is a philosophy for St. George and something we took from other cities we looked at. We're not going to have a lot of employees. I mean, the city of St. George total will have less than 20 full-time employees, period. And part of the reason is it's a reaction to best practices we saw elsewhere. It's also a reaction to what we saw in EBR Parish. EBR Parish has 4,000 employees. That's more than Detroit did per capita before they filed bankruptcy. So we saw that, and we don't want to create that. And that's another problem with the heavy-handed mayor role. That mayor has such autonomy with the budget and hiring that they were, over time, were able to continue growing this giant bureaucracy. So in St. George, for example, the council members at 36,000, one of the reasons we set it where it is we're going to have maybe 1 or 2 assistants, whereas the EBR Metro Council had 1 assistant per person. Well, what the public doesn't look at, they look at the council salary of 36,000, my God. Instead, they need to look at the office of council member and what the total cost allocation is. Because for every council member making 36,000, we're not going to have that assistant. At EBR, they make 47,000 on average a year, not including the benefits package, so add 30% to that total, not including the expense budget they have. I think even legislature gave them an extra 18,000 a year on top of that. So when people look at it, council members in EBR Parish, they make 12,000 a year. The total cost allocation per council member is well over $100,000. Same thing with your mayor's role. With your mayor's role in EBR Parish, he makes $195. That's really not a lot compared to the St. George mayor at $160. He's got 19 people in his executive office that make over $4 million total annually. That is something we're going to avoid, and that's part of our other thing we're doing. Why don't we have employees who's going to do all this work?
Hire better people and pay them.
Privatize it. We're privatizing government. It's worked in Sandy Springs. It works in every city that's employed the business model. And what happens is, instead of DPW doing our landscaping today, we have a private company doing the landscaping. What's the benefit? Well, now your private company is providing jobs in the community. Their owner lives in the community, so he's putting that money back into our economy. So he's sponsoring the baseball team. You also have the ability to fire that person if they're not performing their job. Everybody knows about civil service protected employees. You try to fire one lately? Well, that is literally an act of Congress. But if they're a private company and a private contract, you can terminate that contract for non-performance and have a program or program manager or managers run the entire process. What you get is better service, or you get the same service for less money because they're competitively bidding these processes out instead of continuously hiring more government employees. And the other benefit is when you hire an employee, again, you're paying 30% extra for those benefits, but you also have pension liability. That's going to handicap you for decades. We're not going to have that. If we have 20 employees, our pension liability is going to be minuscule compared to EBR Parish, which means every year when you look at the St. George budget, you're looking at services rendered in the same year, not paying for the history or the past.
So you have 2 people for the whole council staff, is what you're saying?
Yep, because 36,000 a person, we want you to answer, council members answer the phone.
They're going to have more. They just don't know yet.
No. So far, they call me.
I'm not going to fight him on that.
But the idea is to keep your employment staff minimal. I think Hammond and Central are relatively the same size. One has about 1,000 employees, one has 5. The one that has 5 has $100 million in the bank right now.
When St. George was getting sold to folks, the issues, it's two separate issues. We said we wanted a city manager, and we said we're going to privatize everything we can. And so I know those are kind of similar. So your question, we're going to privatize as much as possible. So right now we have a main city contractor. The name of the company is IBTS. They've agreed to, they were working for us for 8 months, on waiting on the pass line to hit. I think we finally got them a check 2 weeks ago. So they've been working for free. So, we didn't have a lot to choose from. They've done a great job for us, and we really, really, really appreciate it. So as we need, let's say, for instance, I could see hypothetically where a council person may need, absolutely, they're going to need an aide. That aide at St. George may not work for the city of St. George. The aide might get a paycheck from IBTS. That way, we don't have the pension burden forever. It's just, nobody works at Exxon anymore. They work for Turner in Exxon. And that's just the way that the plant's done it, because they have the liability and all that stuff.
Well, it takes you the same direction with maintenance. And
we may spend the money, but it won't be a city employee.
No,
Right.
You just said something, they didn't get paid for a while?
They just got paid. This firm's probably been working for 6 months for free.
They're getting paid back.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So no, they're sending bills.
They did not donate their services, I
Yeah.
assure you.
Great, thank you. Ms. Stearns?
I was going to only have one question, but I think I ended up with 2 based on this recent.
Yes, his on.
The outsourcing of things that are non-governmental in nature, all right? Is that in your home rule charter?
Give me a for instance.
Well, you said you privatize just about everything, so you retain things that are governmental in nature. So
There is language in the kind of additional notes section of our home rule charter, and we'd be happy to send you. I think we have a couple copies of it, and
Somewhere.
we can get it disseminated to you folks. There's language in the appendix, the addendum notes section, saying the preference of St. George is the city of St. George is to always look towards privatization before we spend and grow the size of the city government.
And the reason
that is
is-
in there as to remind folks behind us our intent. I don't think you can specify that by law, but we made sure that we put that intent in language right there for everyone to
So
read.
it gave him the availability to do
Yeah.
it.
Yes, they have the availability.
Yeah.
Because there's always the possibility you put something out for bid and you get 0 bids. Or it's a loss leader.
Yeah,
where
there's
it's a
absolutely
service you
things
have
that the
to
government
provide.
has to do that that no one would want to bid on it, because that's one of those government.
So I'll tell you, Sandy Springs, Georgia, again, one of my favorite references. After they became a city for about a decade, they had a bunch of money in the bank. They built a $50 million arts and humanities center. They could not find a private company they were happy with to run it. They did hire employees to run it. But it was something they would not have had they not privatized services leading up to that to save that money. So you privatize it where it makes sense, and you got to make sure you have common sense with that and go, hey, even if you paid a little more to privatize it, typically in the long run, it's cheaper because you're not incurring the pension liability, the benefits. You don't have to buy the lawnmower, the mechanic, the gas, the insurance. All those costs come off, and now you're putting that to roads and drainage for us.
And then the lawnmower's former union, and so you got 4,000 people working here.
in the federal system, it is in law, referred to as Alpha 76, where functions that are non-governmental in nature, you're supposed to compete those functions, all right? So it's for the same reasons you all just said. Long-term, it costs you a lot more for a public sector than a private sector employee. My original question, I'm going to get to now. In your checks and balances, as it pertains to budgeting, the city manager sends to the council the budget, is that correct?
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Does the council have a staff to analyze that?
That is going to be part of the process moving
Not in his
forward.
government.
I'm going to analyze that budget. We're going to have a process for that, and that's probably a service we're going to also bid out. a checks and balance. And then the mayor, in our form of government, the mayor is going to have line item veto authority as well. So we're going to have 2 levels to review at the same time. So once the city manager submits it, instead of one level now where the mayor presents it and the council either loves it or hates it, the city manager presents it, the council reviews it, then the mayor reviews it.
In this particular instance, it's an excellent question. And the answer would be, well, shame on that council if they don't, because they're the ones with the purse strings, not the parish president.
I can tell you in EBR Parish how it works now, and Ryan can definitely attest to this. They get that budget with about $1 billion budget with about 30 days to look at it, and there's not an amount of staff on earth that can comb through that $1 billion budget in a month anyway. And then all of a sudden they have to vote on it. They used to put it out, close to Christmas, so you had Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays mixed in that 30 days, so you wouldn't even have less time to look at it.
Yeah.
That was somewhat of a loaded question. I apologize for that, but it appears that if a council, let's say this council, has a requirement to review the budget and approve it, then to part-time people, that gets to be pretty hard when the budget's
It's
that
impossible.
thick.
It's not happening.
But I also
so-
think you're looking at
but-
expertise as well. You know, if you've got a highly qualified CPA as a council member, that person may have, the ability to look at it a little more thoroughly than I'm just a lawyer. I'm not here to do math. Or you might have an engineer who can look at aspects of it. It just depends on the council person.
A council budget officer could be a really important hire that this council may feel they need. East Baton Rouge Parish had one. It was one person, and he was a super nice guy, but I don't know what he did. I never got a bill scored. I never saw how much an impact of anything would be. I said, why don't we do things like that? Well, it's in the plan of government like this, and I did my one term, and that's a very important thing that the councils have the resources to examine what's going on. And
And part of that privatization model should free up some of those resources to reallocate to things like that really should be bigger priorities that get overlooked because you spend all your money on maintenance and overhead.
Does the council have authority to move money? Like
in under the plan of government we're in right now, St. George, no. Under our proposed home rule charter, they are the only persons that can move money.
Thank you.
In I'm guessing in what y'all are in, the parish president, but they can do all kind of stuff, and then they got to get the council to approve it, and that's not too hard.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Joe, did you have another question?
Real quick. Does the mayor, would he have any input on the parish manager or your city manager?
In the proposed form of government, as much or as little as he wants. We kind of envision this person to be, he has the bully pulpit. He has the veto. He doesn't get, we decided on some weird stuff. He can't vote, but he can veto. He chairs the meetings. He doesn't sit on the council, but he chairs every meeting, which means he has to understand every item. You can't realistically chair a meeting and not know what the hell's going on each item you're doing.
Are you kidding me? It happens all the time.
Yeah. So he's got this person, this man or woman has to be, it's a full-time position. They're going to run that meeting. They get to veto. They can get overridden. And this person is like the chief economic development officer. He's your mayor. This person is your visionary. He's like, and y'all probably maybe have seen East Baton Rouge Parish's old mayor, Kip Holden. He was an excellent economic development guy, and that's what he really should have been doing. He'd dress up like a pirate and whatever, and he'd go all over. And he was an excellent spokesperson for Baton Rouge, okay? He was a very likable fella. That was his skill set. That's what we really want our mayor doing. We want our mayor being the leader and showing us the path and say, here's where we need to go, guys. All right, well then how do we go where this folk's gonna lead us? I want him recruiting businesses coming here.
Going back real quick.
They gotta have the bully pulpit.
For the mayor's role in that veto role, one of the things we looked at was the ability to override that veto. What would it take? And so when you're talking about, we have 7 council members. If they vote 4-3 and you use the traditional veto override of legislature, that's 5-2. And we thought that's not really enough. We need a scenario where if the mayor vetoes something, it's got to be so egregious that it's overridden by 6 out of 7 instead. And that would include one of your at-large candidates would have to vote in favor of it. So you'd have all the districts, or most of the districts, and at least one of the at-larges to override. So we did increase the override percentage for the sole purpose of making that veto a little stronger. In legislature, when they do it, you've got 100 people, so 2/3 is a big number. When you're talking about 7, it was the difference between 5 people to override or 6. And we didn't want a scenario where they could vote 5-2 and the mayor couldn't veto anything, it wouldn't matter. So we did strengthen that to give that authority. So in those cases with the city manager, for example, if they voted to terminate or extend a contract and the mayor vetoed it, it would take 6 out of 7 to either prevent the termination or move forward with the termination. So little more of a check and balance for that.
So your criminal justice system, is that handled exclusively by the parish, or does St. George have anything to do with it?
We're in a consolidated form of government. One of the things we told our folks is, everybody loves the sheriff's department where we live. They do a pretty fair job. And the sheriff's department has been patrolling the streets of this unincorporated place since the beginning of time. And the Baton Rouge cops have been basically this armed military for the mayor, okay? And they've been taking $50 million from the unincorporated areas in a fund transfer to the city to pay for the cops and fire. Well, we already have a fire department that's it's its own entity. It's a political subdivision of the state. It has a dedicated millage, and it's very well ran. We have a sheriff's department that's constitutionally required to protect us on every square inch of the entire parish, and he's paid well. He's got a navy, and he's got armored personnel carriers and warehouses full of stuff. We expect him to continue to do his job. We told the folks that we weren't going to have police, and so our law enforcement and public safety and judicial system is the 19th JDC, our district attorney for the parish, and our sheriff's department. We will not have a city court.
We do have an administrative law.
We have an administrative court.
For ordinance violations, parking violations, the small violations.
Code enforcement.
And part of what we learned was, and part of this was from the DA's office, some of this was just research. If you start a police department, all of a sudden you look down, in the case of Central, they started a police department one day, they look down now, it's 20% of their city budget. They're understaffed still, underfunded still. I don't think they have body cameras still. The DA's office told me it's almost impossible to prosecute anything they do. And it becomes this, why did we do this just for the sake of doing it? Instead, what we looked at is how do we take our sheriff that we already pay a significant portion of property taxes to support and make them stronger and make them better. And so in some cases, I know a lot of people like to say boots on the ground. Those don't exist. Those agencies have been 100 man short for about a decade now. So what can we do from a 21st century model? And so we're looking at those things. And if we can provide the sheriff's office with those tools, more license plate readers, more cameras. You want a drone to patrol Seagan Lane? Let's do it. Give them some resources, rebuild some of their substations to make them modern, put them in places where in one case, the one closest to our city hall is outdated, dilapidated, small, and it's the closest thing to our major population center in St. George. Well, and they pay rent from the parish to stay there. Why don't we build them a better substation where the population has moved to? So, for example, the Jones Creek area can have a robbery burglary division housed out of that area, which is primarily the crimes they suffer from, and increase that police presence where it needs to be.
Yeah, we know that if we want look, I'm coming after y'all. I'm coming after the North Shore. I tell everybody we're going to be better than the North Shore. If we want to be better than North Shore, the people got to feel safe, and you got to be able to leave your doors unlocked. How do you do that when a city council? I don't control the sheriff, and I don't control the DA. We've kind of intimated to them and told them, hey, you're doing this for us, but we're going to have some money. We want to talk about additional resources. How can we get better? How can what tools do you need from us that we can fund? Come sell me something, and we're going to buy it.
And we've been pretty fortunate right now that we have a sheriff that wants to work with us. I think that's part of it. I'm not going to say we can't revisit that conversation later if the scenario changes. Right now, he's got a really cool crime center where you can go see all the cameras from the parish, and you can do facial recognition and all those things. And we want to beef that up. And to that point, in our home rule charter, we prohibit the creation of a police department because what we know is if you hire a police chief, what's the first thing they want to do?
Police.
They want to hire as many cops as they can. That's who's under them. We saw it in Central. We've seen it in other communities.
And then they run into someone, and then they sue the government, and they get a $30 million award. And so why as a city, and I don't know if this really applies to y'all because y'all don't have a law. I don't think y'all have a parish law enforcement that y'all
Right,
control.
yeah.
Okay, but as I would let the sheriff department get sued when they run into the back of somebody.
But
Why
it's-
would the city take that his responsibility?
Another reaction to EBR Parish, they did a study years ago that showed they had over 7 million of unused police department equipment sitting in parking lots rotting. That's maintenance, overhead, and unused equipment because they didn't have anybody to operate it. If we don't ever buy it, we don't ever have to depreciate it, deal with it, park it somewhere, sell it, maintain it, and we can put those resources back into the sheriff's office and let them do it.
Yeah, great. We appreciate it. You've got it, Joe?
What about your legal counsel?
Well, I'm sitting right here, Joe. No. We have a city attorney. Yeah, I'll tell you, so in my parish, I have a huge problem with our parish attorney's office. There's over 80 of them. They make a budget of $7 million annually. And since St. George has been in a few lawsuits with the parish in the last 4 years, every time it gets serious, they outsource it to private counsel. So St. George is going to function with a general counsel, a city attorney's office, and use those funds that they would have hired a multitude of other city attorneys. Let's put those resources towards the private counsel. It has two benefits when you hire private counsel. One, you can get an expert in whatever that field is to handle that case. Two, they can't sue you now. They represent you.
In the plan of government, we did address, city attorney is absolutely addressed, and it's open to being a person, it's a person that will then hire firms based upon their expertise. And it's specifically in there, we're not to grow a city attorney staff of 20 attorneys.
And we have the ability to
We
make
want to go
that.
compromise all the law firms in St. George
That's
so
right.
they can't sue us.
And that ability is either a city attorney individually or a city attorney as in a law firm hired to perform that function.
Yeah. Great, gentlemen, we thank you.
Thank you.
I think I'll get right to you, ma'am. Don't worry. I want to make sure we're complete up here first. Any more questions from the members? Okay, from the public? We have a question?
Yeah, can I just ask for some clarification?
Oh, God,
Come
yes.
to the mic, please.
Yeah, come on up here. We get this all the time. Let's do it.
I apologize, I was a couple minutes late. You were established in 2019.
That's correct.
You got your mayor and your 2%.
Look, I'm just happy you got the date right because Baton Rouge keeps telling me it's 2024.
Well, 2024 is when you got your mayor and maybe your 2%?
That's
From
right.
Baton Rouge?
That's correct.
So you're approximately 6 years old or 1 year old? You're not very old.
No.
Let's just say that. You've got 86,000 people.
Yep.
This parish has 270,000 people. Let's just
Scale.
compare
Scale.
apples to apples. So you've got 5 plus 2, 5 council people, a mayor, and a city manager. And we've got,
Well, 5 council districts, 2 at-larges, a mayor.
So what we have or
Oh,
what's proposed?
so you're 9.
What we have or what's proposed?
oh, that was the other thing. Are you under the Larson now?
We're under Larson.
Today,
you
Larson
want-
with a home rule charter to be voted on at the end of the month.
That's what I was wondering. Okay, so you're only 6 years old and you're already evolving. That's my point. So this is great for a suburb. They're a suburb. And when you mention Detroit, I take it personally because I grew up in suburban Detroit. And Detroit filed for bankruptcy in 2013, rightfully so. But you need to go take a look at Detroit now because they're kicking it.
Yep, now that they
So-
filed bankruptcy and got to get rid of all that pension debt.
Okay, well, and that could be a whole discussion all its own. But your median household income is 96.9 as of 2022. That's a lot of median household income. We're here at 79, so we're a little bit less. We're high, we're way high, but they're in a different category. It's a different group of people. It's smaller, it's manageable. The other thing I want to clarify is you said you had 20 employees?
No, our intention is to have less than 20 employees total by the time we're up and operational. So
But how many do you have now?
misnomer, none.
You have no?
No, none.
Lorraine.
Oh, Lorraine, thank you.
But you have
So here's the misnomer.
$32 million annual budget?
No. So we were
What's that?
incorporated in 2019 with the vote, but we've been in a lawsuit with the parish since April 26, 2024. So we were not able to operate, move forward, or have a tax election. December 7th of 24, we had a tax election. It's going to transfer our revenue to us. Effective April 1st, we'll start collecting those dollars in mid-June. Our projected revenue number is about $65 million annually. Our projected expenses are under $30 million based on what the parish was spending in St. George previously. So I understand the funny part of your scale argument is we get this on the other side, because Central, the neighbor that we've looked at a lot that's got $100 million in the bank, is 1/3 the size of St. George. And it's always, well, you're so much bigger and so much more developed than they are. They're agrarian and you're urban. But the business principles operate the same no matter which model you look at. And there's cities larger than ours that also operate with smaller numbers of employees. And whether it's 20 or 30, it's not 4,000. And you grew up in suburban Detroit.
That's right.
Because everybody moved out of Detroit because they overran the government with employees, pension debt, and contracts they couldn't afford because they refused to change the model. And
No, that's not why.
and they have
I grew up in
a
suburban
serious
Detroit.
heavy mayor form
Okay.
of government in Detroit. So,
Yeah. Okay,
but
well,
no,
thanks for the
so
clarification.
scaling.
Just so-
Good.
So
Yeah.
scaling is what it is.
Different.
Appreciate your
You can
comments.
scale
yeah.
your city the same way, but the
Oh, yeah.
public-private partnership model
Yeah.
works no matter what size your city is. Good business practices are good for one
Right.
population or a million.
I agree. So, we really appreciate. Yes, ma'am. Question?
One quick question, yes, I've got a card coming. Term limits, what are the terms and how long are they?
2 terms, 4 years each.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
But thank you for coming, and thank you for.
Oh, no, thanks for coming.
We appreciate you, both of you. We wish you great success.
Appreciate it. Y'all too. Thank you, guys. Thank y'all.
If you would, if you have a copy of that, would you just give it to our, and some of our members may like to see it, Mary or Christine. All right, next presentation by NACO. Are they online?
Yep.
Good. Jonathan Harris.
Yes, I asked for everyone's patience. So this is the first time we're doing this. He's going to be via Zoom, but he will be able to talk to y'all and you'll be able to ask him questions. So just give us
Great.
a second when we work out the technical difficulties.
All right, I'm going to.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, can you hear us? Jonathan, can you hear us?
How y'all doing?
Yes, can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect.
John, thank you for coming. I'm subbing right now for our
Chairman, if you want to go ahead and get started with your presentation, and after we will ask some questions.
All right, great. And well, yeah, thank you all for having me. And just stop me if there's any issues with the audio or if you have trouble seeing my screen. I have my screen shared here, so can you all see that okay?
Yes.
All right, great. So thank you for having me. I am Jonathan Harris. I'm the Associate Director for Research with the National Association of Counties based in Washington, D.C. So I appreciate you all having me zoomed in for the meeting, and I'm going to run through a number of different items that we've been trying to look into for y'all, and that aligns with some research that we've been doing. And basically, so a quick disclaimer: as the National Association of Counties, we can't necessarily provide direct advice and say like this is the way that you should organize your charter and parish government. But what I'm going to try to do throughout this presentation is kind of place St. Tammany Parish within the national context, so that you all can see where your parish, how your parish compares with counties and parishes and boroughs nationwide, and then also we pulled out some similarly sized counties as well. And a lot of this is we've been doing a lot of research recently around county government structure and authority levels and kind of the nuts and bolts of county governance. So some of the information I'm going to be reviewing with you all is, you'll see, is preliminary. We haven't fully published it yet, but it's still, we've been reviewing and checking it and working on updating it. So just a quick outline of what I'm going to be working through here. Some basic background information to get us started, and then digging into a few specific questions that I was able to chat with you all about previously that we've been looking into, and some of them we have more robust answers than others. So you can bear with me, and we're happy to try and dig more into other areas in the future. So just start with some kind of basic background information, lay the groundwork when we're thinking about counties at the national level. So one of our main messaging points that we always want to begin with is the wide diversity of counties, of county sizes, parish, boroughs. So you see this is a 2023 population map here. Majority of counties are very small. Over 2/3 of counties have less than 50,000 residents, and there are a lot of counties that actually, you can see on the map here, almost 1,300 counties have less than 20,000 residents. But on the other hand, most U.S. residents live within a larger county, and that's what the two graphs on the side are illustrating here. That when we're talking about counties, we're talking a lot about smaller rural areas, and but when we talk about population numbers, we're talking more populated areas. And St. Tammany Parish falls in what we would consider to be the medium-sized county group, which is from 50,000 to 500,000 residents. There are about 800 counties that fall within that range, and St. Tammany Parish is on the kind of right in the middle of that. But we also want to consider geographic size as well. While focusing on population size, we do want to consider geographic size. Again, that's a wide range there. Arlington County, Virginia is the smallest, just 26 square miles. And then you have San Bernardino County, the size of Vermont and New Hampshire combined. And we talk about Alaska, that's a whole other level. But St. Tammany Parish at 845 square miles is right about your roughly your average size county, and pretty comparable to a lot of other county sizes, geographically speaking. And of course, as you move further west, that's when you have the much larger county geographies. So some of the research we've been doing, we've been looking into digging into different county elected officials. There are almost 40,000 county elected officials in the country right now. About half of those are elected commissioners, police jurors, supervisors, council members, and then there are another almost 19,000 that are independently elected constitutional row officers. And we try to look at county parish governments as in terms of the different branches of government: legislative, executive, and judicial. And although we know at the local level those are not as well defined as the national level. Another area we've been looking into is county government authority. So, and we've been, in our research, we try to categorize county governments based on either the more restrictive Dillon's rule or more flexible home rule. And but looking at the state level, where a lot of our research has had to take place, because I'm looking through state statutes, we've we've realized that there's a lot of wiggle room in between there, in the middle, where there's, you know, more flexible Dillon's rule, more restrictive home rule. But what it breaks down to are three areas of autonomy: of how the government is structured and the ability to change that, the functions and services it provides, and then fiscal authority to fund the government. So Louisiana is a state that is more, where parish governments have more flexibility in general than a lot of other counties across the country. And so that's just something to keep in mind when looking at the data here, that not all county governments have the ability to change the way that their government is structured and adjust the home rule charter. And you see some of these kind of darker teal states, such as Texas or Wyoming, and where basically everything is set by the state, and those counties need to adhere pretty closely to what the state says. So with that in mind, we pulled out 131 counties that we thought were pretty comparable to St. Tammany Parish in terms of looking at government structure. We're looking at population size, roughly 200 to 400,000, and we focused on that population size primarily. And we cut out some of the outliers in terms of land area, those that had less than 300 square miles or more than 3,000 square miles, to keep a population density that was a little bit more comparable. And so we have 131 comparison counties across 37 states. Only 38 of these counties are directly under home rule authority. Again, because of the flexibility and restrictions that you see at the state level, that doesn't necessarily mean that that the other ones do not have any flexibility. But I thought this would be a good group to compare with. So first we'll look at council size of the legislative body. So overall, we see most counties have either 3 or 5 commissioners, 75% across the entire nation. So already, Louisiana as a state is a little bit of an outlier, having larger councils and boards than most places. And I know there's some discussion previously about the even number versus odd number of legislative members, and so looking at our data, St. Tammany Parish is as another outlier with 14 members. So there are less than 300 counties of the 3,069 counties that have an even number of council members, while 2,800 almost counties have an odd number. And you can see looking at this map here, the states that have those darker colors are those states that have larger boards or councils than other counties. But this isn't necessarily dependent on population size or geographic size. It's mostly dependent on what the state has in their state statutes, of the restrictions and the government form that are in the state statutes for what counties can have. And I'll also just mention that we've been doing some research into term limits as well, and overall across the country they are pretty rare. I know we've seen more of a movement towards term limits, kind of in the last election, was seen some like local ballot measures, but still, as of our latest research we've been doing, we've only found less than 200 counties that have term limits for their council members, and then about 130 or so counties that have term limits for an elected executive. And so looking at the comparison counties that we pulled out with St. Tammany Parish, so overall the average council size for these counties is about 8, and so there are 112 counties that have less than 14 council members, 19 with more. So St. Tammany Parish is a little bit on that higher side there. And if we look specifically at the smaller group subsection of counties that we know for certain are under home rule authority, their average council size is a little larger at 10. And then we took out certain states that we know have a mandated council size of a smaller council size of either 3 or 5, and that is again about 8. And just to kind of illustrate where St. Tammany Parish falls in terms of council size among these comparison counties, so you can see on that higher side there, well, a little over half of these counties have either 3 or 5 council members. And we dug into some additional research on the size of local governments, local government councils, and thought that this quote was particularly emblematic of what we were finding with the research. There's research on both sides of the aisle of having a larger council, having a smaller council, and some in favor of a larger, some in favor of smaller. But you can see that what it comes down to: large enough to be truly representative, provide for true deliberation, prevent corruption, guard against improper purposes, but at the same time small enough to actually get enough men and women on the council, avoid confusion, avert excess involvement in administration, and really center responsibility too. So I've included here some of the papers and reports that we were looking through. If any of you all want to kind of read through these more in depth on your own time, but I won't get into them today. All right, so looking at we have some preliminary data looking at the format of elections at the local level, at the county level. Nationally speaking, most counties elect their council members by district. About 1,600 you can see, and then you can see the at large, about 600 counties have all of their members elected at large. About you see 555 have a mix, some at large, some by district, and about 300 have all of their council members elected at large, but representing specific districts. So it's a little bit of a different format. And looking specifically at these comparison counties, 59 of the 131 have all of their members elected by district, and versus 31 have all of their council members elected at large. And you can see there's a difference in the average council size. So the ones that elect their members by district have a larger council than those that elect them at large. So 11 versus 5. Average council size of 11 for those that elect by district. And you can see the other breakdown here of if there's a mix, then the average size is slightly higher than at large with 6 council members, and that last category 4. Most of those that were under home rule are electing their council members by district. And we pulled out ones that we removed some of the states that we knew had mandatory format for the elections, and found a little bit of a more even breakdown. 45 by district, 31 at large, and 30 other. And in this next part, talking about government form, what I'm talking about here are administrators or managers versus elected executives versus neither of those. Traditionally, and kind of historically, most counties have just been managed by a council and have not had either an administrator or an elected executive. Although we've seen a trend towards more counties, parishes, boroughs appointing an administrator to be kind of the head CEO of managing the day-to-day operations of counties. So right now there are about 1,300 counties that have an appointed administrator. That's 43% of all counties. About 700 have an elected executive, or also called a mayor or a judge. Very few counties have both an elected executive and an administrator. Only 86 counties, but still there's a large portion across the country that have neither and are just managed and run by the council. And you can see on this map here, there's some states where it's kind of standard across all counties that they need to have an elected executive or an administrator. So that, and when we're looking at the 131 comparison counties, 71%, about 3/4 have an appointed administrator. About almost a third have an elected executive, and that's kind of the same breakdown, looking at the ones that are specifically under home rule authority. And I'll mention just a couple other kind of questions that came up in our discussion that we weren't able to find as much robust research. We didn't have, these are kind of issues that we don't have as much data for, that we've already been collecting and that we could work through and analyze for y'all. But we dug into some of these areas. I know there's a question of an inspector general. So of the comparable counties that we looked into, we found just two counties in Florida, St. Johns County and Okaloosa County, Florida, that have a specific office of the inspector general. Both of them serve within the office of clerk of the circuit court, and it's kind of a merged position of clerk of the circuit court and county comptroller for both of those counties. If you're interested in looking more into this, there is an association of inspector generals that has, and they have a directory of state and local inspector general agencies. So it includes 17, or specifically county offices. Most of them are in Florida, and then there are 4 city-county consolidations that have one as well, including some larger cities like Philadelphia and New York City, or Baltimore City are consolidated governments too. We tried looking into the issue of full-time versus part-time council members, and this is an area where there's definitely more room for additional research. There's not really any data set out there that we could find. We just know that anecdotally, most of our county members that we talk to are part-time. Technically part-time, but working basically full-time. And there is it has come up in different counties, kind of the debate or controversy about whether council members should be receiving full-time whether they should receive full-time benefits, even though they're technically only working part-time. And so they're we've heard of that through our membership from time to time. And then we've also seen a model in some counties, although we don't have hard data on this, we've seen this in some counties of where the council members are part-time, but the council chair or the president or an elected executive would be full-time. And the last area we we're looking into some research around transparency and professional contracts, and so there's kind of two examples we were able to find from those comparable counties. One from Baldwin County, Alabama, specifically from their Board of Education, and another one from Santa Rosa County, Florida. And this isn't really an area that we've been able to dig into as much on our own. So just wanted to present you all with some resources that will perhaps be helpful for you. some other organizations have built out some general guidance for increasing transparency in specific in the procurement process and in determining contracts. And I also just wanted to I have to do a little plug for NACO has our public promise procurement, which is a cooperative purchasing program for public entities. So can put that plug there as well. And so that's basically what the information I wanted to present to you all. If we have a kind of a series of reports that I'm just kind of throwing up on the slides here, part of our general county landscape project, looking into the nuts and bolts of county governments. It includes these state level profiles that dig more in depth into a lot of the information, some of the information I mentioned, and a lot more. A national database you can that helps counties look across states and kind of compare their state with others. And we also encourage folks to check out our Counties 101 tool and our County Explorer that has a lot of county level. It's an interactive mapping tool that has county level data on it. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that y'all might have. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. We appreciate the information. Mr. Rowland?
Thank you, Mr. Harris, for joining us today. Just quick question. Out of your research on this on a national level, what are the trends, if any, that you could highlight to us, maybe in the last 5 to 10 years that maybe we can kind of think about? Any type of trends on any of this?
Did we lose him?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Did you hear that, Jonathan?
Oh, yeah, I heard. Yeah, so I heard the question. I thought I was breaking up for a second, but and so just to make sure I understand, so you're asking for trends in restructuring county governments, if I'm
That's
correct in
correct.
understanding?
Maybe in the last 5 to 10 years, any trends on a national level, that anything that you covered just shows some type of trend one way or the other, either, on the upper side or the lower side of, changing things differently. Anything you can add to that?
Yeah, so I can't speak too much to that. We've been looking into some of the ballot measures that came out of the last elections on the local ballot measures, and we haven't been able to complete our analysis yet on that. I mean, we've seen some movement towards term limits, pretty limited overall, but that was a key category. We've seen that come up, and as far as changing the number of council members, we haven't seen too much of a trend one way or another, although that is partially because most counties are kind of set at either 3 or 5 council members, and I haven't seen too much change as far as either adding or removing an administrator. Longer term, there's been a longer trend of counties adding an administrator or manager, like a kind of decades-long trend. But within the past 5 years, I'm not 100% sure about any kind of real trend there.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Any other questions from the members? I got audience. I'm sorry? Joe.
So is there any ranking of counties throughout the United States by success, like relative to crime, repetitive flood loss, non-polluted waterways, traffic issues, recreation, et cetera? And does that correlate with the type of, and how it would correlate with the form of government they have?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Definitely something, we would be interested in looking at, but we, as kind of a policy being the national association and trying to cater to all of our county members, we don't do rankings to kind of say that one county is better than another. On our County Explorer tool that has that interactive map with the county level data, we do have such indicators like economic growth, GDP growth, or population growth. There are other indicators on there that if you or anyone else would want to kind of try and rank your county based on that, then happy to help you out with the data there. But we don't have kind of official rankings ourselves as the National Association.
Okay.
Okay.
I have one more.
Go ahead.
Are you aware of any councils or commissions throughout the country that enter into contracts themselves, independent of their administration? And I guess I'd be talking about with a home rule charter form of government.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not my area of expertise. So as I don't know personally, but I'd be happy to kind of connect you all with some of my colleagues that work on our procurement program and the cooperative purchasing program. I know that they kind of know more of the details of who they end up working with, or who ends up entering into contracts from their side. So I'm kind of happy to point you in the right direction there, but sorry, I can't answer that question myself.
Stevens.
If in the data that you collect, do you look at compensation packages across the country for the differing council people? Like in comparison, comparing St. Tammany and their compensation rate to, say, St. George or East Baton Rouge or other places, even Abita Springs, where it's my understanding they don't get a compensation package. Has there been numbers assembled for that reason? And while I'm here, I'd like to suggest that the committee also consider zero compensation for the council members. And I know that will shock some of you, but not you, Joe, because you said you'd work for free. But I think that while you're looking at everything, you might want to look at the option, and just to compare, that you get no compensation, because that would guarantee a turnover rate like you haven't seen in a long time. So I'm wondering if you have that sort of data that you are able to share with the committee and with the public, so that we know how St. Tammany compares to other places of the same size. Thank you.
Yeah, so unfortunately at the national level, we don't have that data. It is something we've talked about collecting, although it's we haven't been able to move that project forward yet. What I can point you all to in a follow-up email are a number of state associations of counties do their own state level salary surveys, compensation surveys. So I can point you all to where those are located if you want to kind of look at different states, but we don't have national data on that right now.
Great, thank you. If you could forward any of that information to us, we'd be appreciative, just for the numbers to be able to evaluate. Okay, any other questions from the members? Mr. Davis?
I was just going to tell you, I have some rough numbers for the other top 7 parishes.
Okay, you want to give that to us?
Am I on? Okay. Of the top 7 parishes of population in Louisiana, I have some of the, and these have not been confirmed or verified yet with each one of the parishes, but just some rough numbers. Of the 7 parishes with more than 250,000 people in Louisiana, Caddo has 12 commissioners. They make $100 per month. Calcasieu has 15 police jurors. They make $1,600 per month. East Baton Rouge has 12 council members. They make $1,000 per month. Lafayette has 10 council members, 5 parish, 5 for city. They make $31,583 annually. Jefferson and Orleans, and of course we know what ours is. Jefferson, it has 7 council members. Their pay is, give me one second, I just got that one. The district council members get $73,131 a year, and the 2 at large get $97,508. And then Orleans has 7 council members, and they get $93,504 a year.
Can we put that into the record too, so you'll have it, the information for the members?
It appears that just Jefferson and Orleans are full-time, just by the numbers that I'm looking at, I'm assuming.
Great, thank you. Jonathan, we want to thank you for all of the information and thank Mary for getting this put together. I know we've talked several times and communicated back and forth. Any other questions or comments, Pat?
I just wondered, I heard that.
Turn your mic on.
Is it on now? That had the council members, but did it say anything about, like, the parish president, what he made or whatever?
I didn't look up the parish presidents. I was just looking up the council members or commissioners, whatever they're titled. And these have not been verified by calling each one of these parishes. This is just what we were able to pull offline. So.
Great, thank you. Mr. Davis, you had a card. Did you want, I didn't want to overlook you.
Thank you.
Certainly.
My name is Jimmy Davis, 26629 Mandate Drive in Lacombe. It's good to see everybody again.
Thank you.
I've had the privilege of being on the council for 4 years and also being on planning and zoning for 12. And the one introduction I need to bring up is, first of all, for you committee members, is good luck. Good luck. And I'll tell you why. When I was on the UDC committee, we actually went through every single chapter of that UDC and changed it. Is that your mission is that your mission for this? Is to change every chapter in? Or is
It's not directed that we are to change everything in the charter.
To change, or make recommendations.
It's to review the charter and listen to folks like yourself who want to make some recommendations to this body, who then would vote on those issues, or any member of this body who thinks that there's an issue that they would like to bring up.
Okay.
And then eventually all of this will be sent to the council, who will have final say. They could say, we don't want to do any of it, or we're going to send it to the public, or whatever they'd like to do.
That's good.
But there's no mission to go through to change anything.
Okay.
In my mind.
It's just basically recommendations on what's currently in place, and if there's maybe
through dialogue,
an advantage.
like if you came up and said, I like
good.
14
That's good to
members,
know.
please keep 14 members, we'll so note
Good
it.
enough. I know we had 14 police juries way
Yes.
back when, and as you know.
Correct.
And of course, that's back when we were rural.
Mm-hmm.
We're not rural anymore. It's really pretty simple. We're either rural with a lot of people, or we're just a lot of people, right? Well, Jefferson Parish and Orleans Parish is not rural at all.
Correct.
So these are just a bunch of people stacked in a certain finite area where we have open areas that are still rural. And some people can say, okay, well, I'd like to represent my rural people because they have a say, of course, and that's fair. So, before you just start randomly saying or making suggestions about going
and changing the number of councils and stuff, which you can do, which is fine. It may not be a simple thing. I've been hearing things about going from 14 to 7. I don't know where that number came up from.
Somebody just makes this stuff
Somebody
up.
makes that stuff up. I agree. But you could do it basically on population. Just base it on population of those areas. It may be something you may have 3 districts go to 1 councilman. So, look at the data and try to decide what's best for everybody to be fair for each councilman in the future. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Appreciate you coming tonight.
Thank you.
Great to see you again.
You too.
Okay. Thank you, Jonathan. We appreciate it, and we'll be back in touch. Thank you. I'm going to move now to item C. Article 1 wrap-up answers from legal.
I was not at the last meeting, so a little behind the 8 ball here in terms of responding to questions. I'm sitting far from it. I can move. Everybody, what's up? But Christine did provide me with some questions that came up as you were reviewing Section 1 of the code. The first being Section 106 regarding joint cooperative agreements, and a question or an inquiry about whether to add private sectors to that. It's something that you all could do, but you have to remember that the Louisiana Constitution takes precedence over anything that we have in our charter, and we are limited in expending any public funds under Article 7, Section 14 of the Louisiana Constitution, saying you can't gratuitously donate any public funds. So while you could add a phrase to allow joint cooperative agreements with private entities, it might create some confusion to the general public about what that means in terms of using taxpayer-funded dollars when you're paying that to a private entity.
Yes, I guess if I could clarify, I think the question, and we might ask you to do a little more research for us. If the parish wanted to hire someone to cut all the grass in the parish, the private sector, instead of using public works, I think that's where we were headed with this, to kind of see if that is possible under today's rules, or did we need to add some language?
Well, it's absolutely possible under today's rules, under the contracting authority that the parish government has.
Okay, so there must have been a misunderstanding about the question, because I don't think anybody asked in reference to giving public money to some private organization. I think the question was, am I right? It was about using private sector businesses to help facilitate improvements. And I gave you an example.
Sure.
Okay.
And
so,
again, absolutely, the government has the authority to contract for those types of services. And I don't mean to imply that the government currently cannot enter into cooperative endeavors with private entities. It just has to be done within the constraints of Article 7, Section 14 of the Louisiana Constitution.
yeah, so cooperative agreements, I think, is where we're getting some confusion. Today, the parish could, and you're getting ready to answer that, could, and I like to use my example because it's the most simple. We want to cut all the grass in the parish by a private firm, and we put out a bid.
Yes.
They can do that. So do you want to expand on that?
Yes, we're actually already doing that. We have contracts. We don't use CEAs for that, but we use contracts for it. Yeah, and we have several areas across the parish that we use contract grass cutting.
And it could be for other things too. I mean, if you so desired.
Yes, and we do. We already have those contracts in place for other things as well.
Okay.
Yeah, cooperative agreements generally tends to mean an equal exchange of services. So you're not paying for those services, but in the case of a hurricane that hit St. Tammany hard, Tangipahoa may have resources that they're able to lend us, so we can enter into a joint cooperative agreement with them to be able to borrow some of their services, which might not otherwise be allowed by law because it's funded by their tax base. But in times of emergency, we can enter into a cooperative agreement to use those resources.
Because of the declared emergency.
Correct.
Right. So, Carl, I think In particular, you had discussed making sure that the parish could have that possibility. So are you comfortable now that?
Just a follow-on question.
Okay.
You said the parish absolutely has that authority now, okay, to outsource, okay? And we well see it, in some of the drainage projects and so forth. Is there any limitation in the Constitution for the parish government in that regard?
I mean, we can't pay more than the service is valued at. Again, going back to that same gratuitous donation.
I was really referring to, is there something that parish government maybe has traditionally done that could be outsourced possibly, that could, but would be limited by the Constitution?
Well, putting my own job at stake here, the legal services is something that is limited by the Home Rule Charter, but you all could change it to allow the parish to hire outside counsel.
Yeah, the federal government is defined as, they're actually required to compete functions that are not governmental in nature. There's nothing like that in the Louisiana Constitution, I guess is my question.
No.
Okay.
So I'm going to get to Jeff. Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay. Thank you. I had mentioned this section as well, and again, my perspective, though, was a little different as it relates to what I wanted us to at least discuss and see what the possibilities were. I think everyone knows what I do for a living, in that I'm often involved with bringing economic opportunity to the parish that requires some form of parish approval, entitlement, discussion. And so it's been my experience that the private sector has often had to provide infrastructure needs and/or the money for infrastructure in order to facilitate their private expansion, development, etc. None of which I have a problem with, and none of which my clients have a problem with. But I'd like to make sure that the charter envisions the private-public CEAs so that we can use it as for economic incentive, economic growth incentive, such that it might be possible. I think it would allow Chris Massengill and others some additional weapons when they're looking at either retaining business in our parish so that it can expand, or recruiting new business to our parish. If they knew that some of the things they might be asked to do would be part of a master contract, again, no public funding for the private sector, or things that are mandated that the private sector has to do. I understand that's distinguishable, and that's not where public dollars should be spent. But I think we might find that that would be an interesting tool. So I continue to have an interest in possibly adding private entity, private body, etc., into this provision of the charter, but want to hear more discussion.
Would that, Jeff, be the same as development agreements?
Similar to what we did years ago.
Years ago, we used to do development agreements prior to this. Jeff?
Larry?
You did that all?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Yes, sorry. Emily, just to clarify really quick, because I'm hearing everybody, I just want to be sure there's really nothing that couldn't be privatized.
There's nothing that could not be privatized, is your question correct?
Yes, I'm sorry. So, I mean, is there something there we missing that we would have a problem with? Or could it be across the board that it all could be privatized? You know, whatever we would pick, or think the parish president can pick, or the way it's written now.
I'm hesitant to say yes to that question, because it would require some restructuring of the charter in order to privatize any current services. And there may be things that I'm not even thinking of right now that could be affected. So I don't want to give a blanket yes to that statement, but generally I think that many services could be provided by contract under the current charter.
So I think we're going to dig a little deeper into that. Obviously, there's some interest in that. So is there something research-wise you can give us to kind of clarify that? Because I think it will be coming down the road, just to look at it a little bit deeper. So not to say we need it next meeting or anything like that, but I think the timing is going to probably allow us to kind of tackle it.
I'm happy to do that, and I'll meet with you separately to kind of nail down what it is that you're envisioning. But I see that as something separate from what Mr. Shane has raised in terms of public-private partnerships. And I do think that is something that is currently allowed both in our ordinances and by state law. But I understand that what you're saying is by putting it in the charter, it puts an emphasis on that. I would recommend doing it, however, as an additional section to the Home Rule Charter rather than an amendment to Section 106 where it is currently. And that's something that I can work with you on as well to actually work out some language in terms of private-public partnerships.
Thank you.
That if you could, we'd like for you to do that, because I think there's enough discussion from the members that would like to see further. My example might be, let's say you wanted to, today, can they hire a firm to do all their permitting? Could they hire a firm to do all their inspections? And with the intent, I'm not saying that we're not doing a good job today. The intent is, if you remember what happens when we have employees, you have those benefits that continue long after. And sometimes privatizing will save you dollars in the long run. So
Sure, and I mean, just something like a grants department, grants management.
Yes.
Sometimes those grant requirements that are actually part of our very complex funding of government have certain requirements about who can administer those grants. So that's why I don't want to give a blanket, yes, we can privatize this, because there's so many intricacies and so many different funding sources that the parish uses to run government as a whole.
Yeah, I think we're just looking for if it's possible and could it be included. That's all.
Okay.
That's all. Ms. Stevens, you had a question?
Just a comment regarding Mr. Shane's proposal. I think it's an excellent one, but I think it should be expanded so that there are certain CEAs, they're very transparently written, what the terms and conditions could be. Not that they can all be specified, because certain things come up, and in the world of development, there are lots of times when for a development to go through, a road needs to go through, a road should go through, a road could be put in by the developer to enhance the development, and there should be that vehicle that it's 1, 2, 3, 4. You can employ this type of CEA, this type of CEA, this type of CEA, A, B, C, D, and if it's then presented to the public that option D is being employed, everybody can go back to option D and say, well, that's something we've all agreed is a good idea, and that will enhance this project and enhance the approval process. So that's all I have to say about that. I think it's a really good idea.
Great, thank you.
But to your comment about privatizing inspections, being in the construction industry myself, I would strongly encourage not doing that. We've seen examples of privatized inspection companies like in Kenner and in New Orleans where buildings have collapsed. It's really chancy business. I would not do it. Thank you.
And that's not our call. What my question was trying to give examples of, do they have the right to do some of these decisions? I may agree with you or not agree with you, but that's not the discussion. It was mainly trying to determine their ability.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. No other questions? Thank you.
There were two other just bullet point items on the legal follow-up, if you want me to address those quickly.
Please, yes.
In section 102 and in section 106, Ms. Tanner had questions about what the definition of the parish is. The parish, as used in the charter, is generally the government itself, so the council and the president. And there may be some things that in other sections of the charter, the president has the ability to act alone for certain joint cooperative endeavors. And in section 102, I mean, the form of government is the president and the council together. That is what the parish is.
Ms. Tanner?
And I guess my question was, on 102, it states it is the council and the president, but if you look in 106, it just says the parish has the right to enter into cooperative agreements and governmental contracts. Well, right now, I think that's what the president does. I'm just asking to clear up, is it 102 or is it 106? Do we need some language, or is that something this council should look at to see if contracts should be brought before, it's very misleading to me. And I just think that's something, because Kevin told me to read the first section, and I read the first section, and that's what I came up with. I think it just needs to be clarified.
Sure, and again, just as a reminder, the Section 106 for joint cooperative agreements, when it talks about intergovernmental contracts, that's not contract authority generally. That's just intergovernmental contracts with other governing entities.
So this is just government contracts only, intergovernmental?
Exactly.
Okay. Would it be intergovernment cooperative agreements and contracts? I mean, should the wording be a little bit more specific on 106? I guess is what I'm asking. I don't mean to be petty, but it's just...
Sure, no, I mean, it could be. If there's specific instances that you feel need to be addressed and that there's vagueness here, I think it was probably intentionally vague because there could be agreements where the council does not need to be involved in those intergovernmental agreements. I mean, just to give you a very basic example, the city of Mandeville sometimes uses Department of Public Works employees to help clean up after the Eve Parade. That is an intergovernmental agreement that's allowed under our home rule charter. That's not something that the council approves. And so I think the parish is probably left intentionally vague in this section to allow that flexibility. But if you feel that it is too vague and needs to be clarified, that's also something that this commission and the council can address.
I'm going to ask what the wishes of the council. I mean, I guess I can live with it. I just think it needs more clarity, but I can live with it like it is.
Yeah, I think that the question is, the verbiage is, it just says the parish shall have that right. So I think Ms. Tanner's question is, who is that?
Right, because on 102 it says the parish is the council and
That's her
the
question.
president.
Right, and I think that the parish here, as it's referred to in section 106, is left intentionally vague because sometimes the parish acting in these agreements is just going to be the administration, allowing DPW employees to help the city of Mandeville. And sometimes, if it's going to be an appropriation that the council has authority over the budget, it's going to involve the council as well. So sometimes it'll just be an administrative role, and sometimes it'll be a council and administrative role. So I believe that it was intentionally vague for that purpose. But again, that's something that you all can address if you feel it's necessary.
Should we just kind of bypass this and see if it's done in another section that it's more,
Sure.
it clarifies
Yeah.
what those things are? Because, like I say, it's...
What if, just for your legal mind, if you go back to do research, what if the verbiage had both administrative and council? If you had both in the language here, and you don't have to answer now if you want to go back and look at that.
Right, but I mean, if you think about that just in practical terms, if it required the administration and the council to act, then you're talking about having an action by the council that has to come up on an agenda, and the council only meets once a month. So there are implications to doing it that way and to changing it for every intergovernmental agreement to require council action.
I agree. It's the wishes of the group. That was just, I think that was your question, though.
Right.
You're trying to understand who is the parish, and
You
so.
are correct. I just don't want any,
But Ms. Tanner, also, all of these items, because I'm going to move us along, you can come back to.
Okay.
So always feel free on any item that we've worked on. Later, if you discover something and you say, look, I really think we should change 106, and we're in number 3, feel free to do so.
okay, thank you. Got it.
Let me make sure that we're going to address Jeff. Do you want to do you understand the questions that we're going on, Emily, with Jeff's suggestion, or should we send you something?
No, I think I have an idea, and luckily I have all your phone numbers and email addresses to bother you if I have follow-up questions.
Good. Okay, great. So Jeff will handle it that way.
That would be fine. And I was going to suggest that perhaps maybe we let our clerk, keep a running list of these topics that we have discussion on, but we know we don't want to take all of the time now, and we want to see where we are at the end. But I think it would be, rather than each of us depending on our own notes and recollection, it might be nice if we had a reference list, and that way we can clean it up at the end and make whatever decisions we want to make, et cetera.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Thank you. And Emily, I think we have one other. It was the council need to approve comprehensive plans. There was a.
Yes. So this is in section 104B. It says the parish shall prepare, enact, enforce, and maintain comprehensive plans for the development of the parish. And the question, which I believe came from a public comment, was did the council need to approve the comprehensive plan, which, as you may recall, the parish adopted New Directions 2040 and I believe 2022. And we're actually still in litigation over the adoption of that master plan. And again, this says the parish. Who is the parish? Well, the parish is the council and the president. And the parish is also all of the organizations and committees under the council and the president. In this case, we have a planning commission, and state law states that the planning commission shall approve or shall adopt the comprehensive plan. So this is something that we researched and we spoke about before we brought this to the planning commission. Is this something that the council needed to ratify? Looked at AG opinions, looked at jurisprudence for the state of Louisiana, and determined that no, the legislature has given that role to the planning commission to adopt the master plan. However, the Title 33 also requires that any time the parish council makes any ordinances changing zoning regulations or the zoning map, they're required to use that master plan or to consult that master plan in making that determination. So although the parish council did not ratify or did not adopt the comprehensive plan, it was done by the planning commission in accordance with state law. The parish council does enact, enforce, and maintain the comprehensive plan every time it makes a zoning change. And if you ever look at the staff reports on the zoning change applications, it talks about whether this zoning change is consistent with New Directions 2040, which again is the parish's comprehensive plan. So the parish may not be defined here, but I think it's, again, intentionally not defined because different agencies, different committees, different branches of government have different roles in the adoption, the enactment, the enforcement, and the maintenance of the master plan.
Great. Any questions? That answers it? Okay. Ms. Stevens, you got a question?
No, I have a comment because when the 2040 plan was first brought up this time, this is the second time we've done it, in the original documentation that was created by the parish that the consultant put out to the public, very specifically in that information, and I have copies I'm happy to share with you, the ultimate goal was to create a plan that was accepted by planning and zoning and then forwarded to the parish council for consideration of adoption. That's what was presented to the public. That's what we voted on. That's what, commented on. And then when it came before the parish planning and zoning, I was there, Carlo was there, Joycelyn was there. We noticed that when we filed our appeals, we were prevented. That's what led to the lawsuit, because all of the documentation up to that point, and in addition, and I'm happy to share this with you as well, in the prior adventure with 2040, the same thing happened. At the conclusion, it went before the parish council for approval. Now, it was not adopted by the parish council the prior time, but that was their choice. They still had that choice. This time, the parish council was sort of given that option, but they weren't. And you mentioned at the last meeting that I wasn't here, but I was traveling and enjoying it on my car phone, my car audio. So because I've lived this, because I was one of the original litigants regarding the 2040 plan, because anything planning and zoning does can be appealed to the council, except final subdivision. That's the rule, that's the law, that's not what happened. I'm going to urge this body to go back and look at the adoption of the comprehensive plan to be the council's obligation. That's your responsibility. That's what we rely on you to do, is to look at what planning and zoning does, and you make the ultimate agreement that that plan was good, bad, needed to be adjusted. None of you got that opportunity to adjust that plan, and now you have to do it via who shows up to complain to council meetings. So you should have had a part in that, and you should have had the opportunity to debate it and decide whether you liked it, you didn't like it, your constituents liked it, didn't like it, but you didn't have that opportunity.
Okay.
So it's important that you reconsider the 2040 plan going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I think you answered the question, Emily. Thank you. Right. We have a...
Oh, I just
Understand.
want to make sure I understand. We do not have to, I was told that the council, if they approved it, it was law. So therefore, we did not adopt it. I'm, and I know we probably can't talk about this because there's a lawsuit. So.
And I don't know that it's in our preview as a commission to argue that. I mean, I'd love to sit and talk to you about it, but
Right.
I don't know that that's our jurisdiction.
Okay.
I appreciate the public comment and the discussion, but I don't think we need to go any further with it, really. Pat?
If I remember right, well, I think it would be a good idea if we had an option on it, like she's saying. I think when we voted, it was acknowledging that it was presented to us only, that we did see it, that it existed. We didn't vote to approve it.
And I think legal counsel just addressed that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's a place in the charter to amend something that says something different. I think, I'm sorry that it happened, but if okay, I'd like to go ahead and move on. Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff.
You just took the words out of my mouth.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Emily, appreciate your work on all of that.
Sure.
All right. The next item is discussion of March 27th meeting postponement. It's really not a postponement. I'd ask the members in the public, there's a lot going on that particular week, and I'd ask them if they would be in favor of moving the meeting to March 31st at 6 p.m. As a lot of our members are going to be really busy that last week, and I think the administration too. As we all know, there is an election coming up, and we want them to be able to facilitate their constituents. So if there's not a problem, I'd take a motion that we would move that meeting. We have a motion by Ms. Tanner, a second by Mr. Rowland. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Is it the same time?
You can, please.
Same time, right?
6 p.m.
6 p.m. Yes, ma'am.
Problem is, once again, look at all of us still in this room. And when we were at the meeting last Thursday, at the council meeting, there was a lot of discussion about how no one shows up, but Carlo and myself, of course, Terry was on speakerphone, and we have a few of the people here tonight. What are we going to do to announce or broadcast or put on Facebook other than that there's a meeting? People do not know. And the next meeting is going to be about addressing, excuse my glasses, the size of the council. That's a hot topic. How can we get people, how do we announce, Joe, excuse me, Mr. Impastato, at the council meeting, perhaps at every commission meeting? It just could be, don't forget, we have the new charter committee meeting, and it's going to be announcement on St. Tammany, an announcement from Mike Cooper, and Mike and I spoke about this in the lobby at the council meeting, how important it is for somebody to say something besides me. I put out 240 emails reminding people to come out. That is absolutely pathetic. I don't know what we're going to do, Mr. Chairman. We've got to do something.
I agree. We've been trying to do as much as we can, I know.
Like what?
Well, I know we've put it out, we air it, we've put it out on social media.
Well, I haven't
I'm
seen
hopeful.
it, and I'll watch.
Yeah, because at the end, I want to make the announcement in reference to what we're going to be discussing at 6 p.m. on the 31st, which I think will give us a couple of weeks of people to understand what we're going to talk about. Mr. Impastato?
I was just going to say, we did announce it at the council meeting, and it's on the parish's Facebook page. And look, animal control ordinance, about 10 zillion likes and shares. This, 3. So I don't think it's not out there.
Yeah.
I see a lot more about animal control. And also, to everyone here, let's look at all of these issues with an open mind. 14 council members, I've heard so much opposition to that. Open your mind. I don't know what's best for this council, and you all, each and every one of you know, I've been here and been doing it for years, and when I'm not here face to face, I'm listening.
Good.
Okay?
Continue
Please
to do
open
that.
your mind.
We appreciate it.
And I will send you my
Thank you.
card.
So we will meet on the 31st at 6 p.m. Is there any other public comment? Oh, we had a card.
Yes, so what we're going to do is, this gentleman is actually on the Zoom, so we're going to do similar with what we just did with Mr. Jonathan with NACO. So if you give us 1 second so our PIO can switch over the feed. So
Sure.
Ashley, you have to unmute him though. There he is. Glenn, can you hear us? Okay, I think it's unmuted now. Can you try, Glenn?
Yep, can you hear me now?
Yep, yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. Yes, I'll be brief. I just, my first call out was in response to Mr. Davis's public request for comment earlier when we first started. I just recognized, in our parish council meeting last week, it seemed like there was kind of so a lot of interest around certain topics to be discussed within the Home Rule Charter Committee. I just wanted to emphasize, me as a resident of the parish, I think the scope of the Home Rule Charter Committee should, there shouldn't be any restrictions or limitations on it. I think the right thing to do is, everything should be evaluated and considered, and then, based on the data, right proposals put forward for consideration with the parish and other stakeholders. So that was just the first call out that I wanted to make. The second is a concern I had. It's a concern regarding remarks by the second speaker. I don't remember their name, but they were going on about some recommendations regarding, what I heard is really, kind of dissolving or kind of doing away with parish or city civil division attorney staff, which I'm not against that. If that's the right thing to do, I'm for it. But my concern is that speaker specifically cited one of the benefits to do that was, what I heard, and my understanding was the intent to really create a deliberate conflict of interest between most or all law firms within the parish. So no local law firm could take on any action against the parish. And, what I heard in understanding that, the intent of doing that, I believe that's a really an unfair structure that can substantially be prejudicial and disrespectful to the residents within St. Tammany Parish. So my concern really is that the intent of that suggestion to restrict or obstruct all or local law firms from representing any opposing parties.
Over some comment made by the gentlemen, but I appreciate your comments, and I don't think I don't think that that's something that the members are evaluating. So, but I really appreciate you coming on to tell us. It's exactly what we were looking for, so thank you.
And go ahead.
Go ahead, I'm good.
No, I was just going to wrap up. I appreciate that feedback, and I recognize and agree. There must be an existing bias with the parish to reduce and eliminate risk and liability. My only thing is, and I'm sure all the residents and everybody will agree too, though, is that we need to do it in a way that's appropriate and proper, and is not prejudicial to the residents and everybody we're representing. I'll pause there for now.
Yes, I think all the members here agree with that, so we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the time and attention.
Yes, sir. All right. The next step is the established agenda topics for the next meeting. I would say, members, that we are through section 1, but again, that does not mean at any point in any of our meetings coming up that you can't bring something back up on section 1. I think Jeff's comment about hopefully making a list of these items from our staff so that we can bring them back up in different sections. So the next one will be Article 2, Parish Council. And it is 6 p.m. meeting on the 31st of March, and that will begin the discussion of that section, which is consisting of 14 members. So that's when the discussion of membership will take place. And yeah, that meeting is on a Monday. March 31st is a Monday. I appreciate the membership allowing us to move that meeting to help the parish. Also, I do want to tell you that we did receive a resolution from the parish council. I just want to acknowledge that we've received it. It would probably go into this next section, because that's when we're going to be making those discussions. So we did receive it, and we'll go from there. I see that the bonding attorney's here. Did he want to speak? We made you sit this whole thing, but
thank you very much, and I'll take 20 seconds.
All right.
And it's a pleasure being here, and we've talked to various of you, and we will be looking at proposed revisions from the perspective of bond counsel in the event there's anything that has any effect on tax and bond authority. We work with Emily on a number of parish matters, and ultimately we will be assisting with any matters that are submitted to the voters and working on the propositions with you and particularly with Emily.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Anything else before we adjourn? Any members? Any questions? Comments? Great. Jeff?
Just a brief moment, and I don't say this for any sugar coming my way, but I think it's important to note that Mr. Chairman and staff, y'all have done a good job at bringing some good speakers to us. I mean, we talked about that a couple of meetings ago, and if you really think about what we've been exposed to in the last 2 meetings, and we're not finished learning, I'm not suggesting that, but I not only say that to commend those, but I realize that the public's listening to this as well. And so I want to make sure that, at least from my perspective, and I'm getting to know those on this committee that I did not know well prior to being on this committee, our minds are wide open, and there is no agenda as to where we're going. Yeah. And if everyone will understand that this is the first time I've ever sat on a committee of this subject matter, so you got to learn, but I commend us. I think we're in the process of learning, and I appreciate that, and I want the public to know that. So takes a little time to build Rome, but we're on our way.
Thank you, Jeff. Mary?
Just one thing that was also said, I want to make sure, just to clarify. When y'all decide on certain recommendations, obviously there might be a cost associated. The council staff will help you know about what those costs are. And then if you have any questions about the budget, we are more than happy to help you go through that. I think the important way is to wait, and I'll have to, as we said, we have a huge election on the 29th. That's going to make a big difference about what those answers will be.
Yeah, that's some of my concern. So I'm not sure of some of our directions. So I didn't want to get into any discussion of, you know, assistance to help us write any changes at this point. I think we wait until March 31st and we'll see that direction. I think hopefully it's good news, but we'll have to wait and see.
Sounds good.
Anything else before the committee? I have a motion to adjourn. So moved, and a second. All in favor, say aye. Thank you.